Y'all, when I heard those words come out of my own son's mouth, PIPS, MY son, AMPS, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After 47 years of being a registered nurse, after working double shifts to put that ungrateful boy through college, after babysitting his kids every weekend for FREE while he and his wife went out partying,
He looked me dead in the face and said I smelled like medicine and needed to stay away from his children. Honey, my voice caught right in my throat because I never thought in a million years my own flesh and blood would speak to me like I was some kind of disease. My name is Dorothy Mae Richardson. I'm 74 years old and I live here in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been a nurse at Vanderbilt Medical Center since 1978, working in the cardiac ICU unit where people's lives hang in the balance every single day. You know what? I saved lives, sweetie. I held dying patients' hands when their families couldn't be bothered to show up. I worked Christmas mornings, Thanksgiving dinners, New Year's Eves, missing my own family gatherings so other families could have their loved ones come home alive. And this is how my son repays me. But honey, they had absolutely no idea what Mama was about to do next. You could hear the mischief just dancing in my voice because what happened next was going to change everything forever. Let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started. It was December 15th, just 10 days before Christmas, and I had been planning this family gathering for months. I bought presents for all 6 of my grandchildren, my son Michael's 3 kids, and my daughter Sarah's 2 little angels. I'm talking about expensive gifts, y'all. Video games, designer clothes, those fancy electronic tablets they're always begging for. I spent over $2,000 of my retirement money because I wanted to see their little faces light up on Christmas morning. Now, I need to pause right here and tell you something important about the money because, honey, this is where it gets really interesting. For the past 15 years, ever since my dear husband Harold passed away from a heart attack, I've been saving every penny I could in a special college fund account. Not for me. Lord knows I'm too old for college now. But for my grandchildren, I wanted them to have opportunities I never had. I wanted them to go to any university they dreamed of without worrying about student loans crushing their spirits like they did mine back in the day. Every month, I put away $500 from my nurse's salary. $500, sweetie, which meant eating generic cereal for breakfast, shopping at thrift stores for my clothes, and driving my old 2010 Honda Civic until it practically fell apart in the hospital parking lot. I sacrificed everything for those kids. The account had grown to $187,000. $187,000, honey. That's enough to send all 6 grandkids to in-state universities with money left over. Before I tell you what happened next, and darling, this part is going to absolutely shock you. If you're loving this story, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell. You know I get so excited when I see y'all in the comments. Speaking of which, what state are you calling home right now? Drop it down below. And sweetie, tell me, have you ever had family treat you like you didn't matter? Because your stories help me know I'm not alone in this crazy world. Now let me tell you what I discovered next, because what they did was about to backfire in the most beautiful way. So there I was, standing in my kitchen wrapping the last of the Christmas presents with my arthritis-gnarled fingers when the doorbell rang. It was my son Michael. And honey, I could tell something was wrong from the way he wouldn't look me in the eyes. He's 46 years old now, a successful accountant with his own firm, living in one of those fancy suburban neighborhoods with the perfectly manicured lawns and HOA fees that cost more than my monthly groceries. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, and already my heart was starting to sink because nobody ever says we need to talk when they're bringing good news. I invited him in, offered him coffee like I always do, but he just stood there in my living room like he couldn't wait to leave. That's when he dropped the bomb that would change our relationship forever. "Mom, the family's been talking, and we've decided it would be better if you didn't come to Christmas dinner this year." Just like that. No sugarcoating, no gentle lead up, just bam. You're not invited to your own family's Christmas celebration. I had to sit down in Harold's old recliner because my legs suddenly felt like jelly. My voice came out barely above a whisper when I asked him why. And y'all, what he said next is going to make your blood boil just like mine did. He looked at me with those cold eyes, the same eyes I used to kiss goodnight when he was scared of monsters under his bed, and said, "Mom, you smell like medicine all the time. It's from the hospital. Rebecca thinks it might not be healthy for the kids to be around all those germs and chemicals you bring home on your clothes." Rebecca, his wife, the woman who hadn't worked a day since they got married, who spent my son's money on designer handbags and weekly salon appointments while I wore the same 3 uniforms to work every week for years. She was worried about my hygiene affecting the children I had been babysitting, changing diapers for, and loving on every single weekend for the past 8 years. But honey, it got worse. So much worse. Michael continued talking like he was reading from a script, and I could practically hear Rebecca's voice coming out of his mouth. The kids have been getting sicker more often lately, and Rebecca researched online that hospital workers can carry superbugs and dangerous bacteria. We just think it's better to be safe. Superbugs, dangerous bacteria. I couldn't help but let out this bitter little laugh because the irony was absolutely killing me. I had dedicated my entire career to fighting infections, to keeping people alive, to making sure family didn't lose their loved ones to the very diseases they were worried about. And now my own son was treating me like I was patient zero in some kind of medical horror movie. "What about Christmas morning?" I asked, and honey, my voice was starting to crack like old paint. "I've already bought all the presents. The kids are expecting Grandma Dot to be there." That's what they call me, Grandma Dot. And hearing that nickname come out of my own mouth made those tears threaten to spill over because I didn't know if I'd ever hear it again. Michael shifted uncomfortably, and that's when he delivered the final blow. "Rebecca thinks it would be better if you just dropped the presents off beforehand. Maybe Christmas Eve morning when the kids are at their other grandparents' house. That way they'll still get their gifts, but we can avoid any complications." Complications. That's what I had become to my own family. A complication to be managed and avoided. I let out the longest breath you ever heard because 38 years of raising that boy, of working overtime to pay for his college, of babysitting his kids for free every weekend, none of that mattered anymore because his wife had decided I was a health hazard. But you know what, sweetie? As devastated as I was, there was something in his tone that didn't sit right with me. Something rehearsed about the way he delivered this news. My nursing instincts kicked in, the same instincts that had helped me detect lies from patients trying to hide drug use or family members making excuses for abuse. Michael was lying about something, and I was going to find out what.
After he left, I sat in Harold's chair for a long time, just processing what had happened. The house felt emptier than it had since my husband died, and the Christmas tree lights seemed to mock me with their cheerful blinking. That's when I decided to call my daughter Sarah. Surely she would have a different perspective. Surely she would invite her old mama to spend Christmas with her family instead. But honey, when Sarah answered the phone, I could tell immediately that she already knew about Michael's visit. Her voice was all tight and uncomfortable, like she was walking on eggshells. "Oh, hi, Mom. I was just thinking about calling you." "Sarah, darling, did you know about Michael's decision regarding Christmas?" I asked, and the silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. When she finally spoke, her words came out in this rushed, guilty tumble. "Mom, we talked about it as a family. We're just worried about the kids' health, especially with flu season and everything. Maybe it's better if we do a smaller celebration this year." A smaller celebration? Without me? Without the woman who had changed their diapers and taught them how to ride bikes and stayed up all night when they had fevers? That's when something clicked in my brain, y'all. Both of my children, who rarely agreed on anything, had suddenly decided in unison that their old mama was a health hazard. Both of them were using the exact same excuses about germs and safety, and both of them seemed nervous and guilty when delivering the news. My 47 years of reading people's faces and detecting lies told me there was something else going on here. I spent the next 3 days doing some detective work that would have made Nancy Drew proud. First, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who lives across the street and sees everything that happens in the neighborhood. "Dolores," I said, using her full name so she'd know I was serious, "have you noticed anything unusual about Michael and Rebecca's house lately? Any extra cars or visitors?" Mrs. Patterson, bless her heart, is 79 years old and has been living on our street for 30 years. She knows everyone's business better than they know it themselves. "Oh, honey," she said, and I could hear the concern in her voice. "I didn't want to worry you, but they've been having a lot of fancy cars in their driveway lately, expensive-looking ones, and last weekend they had some kind of big party with catering trucks and everything." Catering trucks? Expensive cars? Fancy parties? This was news to me because Michael had been claiming money was tight, and that's why they couldn't afford to contribute to the grandchildren's college funds like we discussed. I thanked Mrs. Patterson and hung up, my mind racing with possibilities. Next, I decided to do a little social media stalking. Now, I'm not usually one for Facebook and Instagram. I barely know how to post pictures of my garden, but my granddaughter, Emma, had taught me how to look people up online. I went to Rebecca's Instagram account, and honey, what I saw there made my jaw drop to the floor. Picture after picture of expensive dinners at Nashville's fanciest restaurants, designer handbags that cost more than my monthly rent, a brand new BMW in the driveway that definitely wasn't there the last time I visited, and most shocking of all, a recent post about their investment property in Florida that they're using as a vacation rental. Investment property? When did they buy investment property, and with what money? I scrolled through months of posts, and sweetie, it was like watching a movie of my son's financial success unfold in real time. Rebecca posting about their weekend trips to Atlanta, their expensive wine tastings, their children's enrollment in a private school that costs $20,000 per year per child. $20,000! When Michael had told me just 6 months ago that money was too tight to help the grandkids' college savings. But the post that made my blood pressure spike was from 2 weeks ago. It was a picture of Rebecca at some fancy charity gala wearing a dress that probably cost more than I make in a month, with the caption, "So grateful for our financial advisor who helped us restructure our assets this year. Living our best life. #blessed. #financial freedom." Restructure their assets? That phrase stuck in my mind like a splinter because it reminded me of something. A few months ago, Michael asked me detailed questions about my savings accounts, my retirement funds, and specifically about the college money I had been setting aside for the grandchildren. He said he was just curious about my financial planning, maybe wanting to help me optimize my investments. I had been so touched that my son cared about my financial security that I gave him all the details, account numbers, bank information, even made him my emergency contact on several accounts. Y'all, I couldn't believe what I was thinking, but the pieces were starting to fit together like a jigsaw puzzle from hell. I got dressed and drove straight to First National Bank, where I've been keeping the college fund account for the past 15 years. My hands were shaking as I walked up to the teller, sweet Linda, who had been handling my transactions for years. "Miss Richardson, how are you today, honey?" she asked with her usual bright smile, but I could see in her eyes that something was off. There was a nervousness there, like she knew something I didn't. "Linda, I need to check the balance on my education savings account number ending in 4429. I handed her my ID and debit card, trying to keep my voice steady even though my heart was pounding like a drum in my chest. Linda's fingers clicked across her keyboard, and then her face went pale. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Miss Richardson, there's been some recent activity on this account that... Just tell me the balance. My voice came out sharper than I meant to, but honey, I could feel disaster approaching like a tornado on the horizon. Ma'am, the current balance is $437.16. $437 out of $187,000? I had to grab the counter to keep from falling over because the room started spinning like a carnival ride. That's impossible, I whispered. There was $180,000 in that account. I just checked it on mine 3 months ago. Linda's voice was full of sympathy and confusion. Miss Richardson, there were several large withdrawals over the past 2 months. Let me print out the recent transaction history for you. She handed me a paper that would change my life forever. Withdrawal, $45,000, November 1st, Michael D. Richardson, authorized user. Withdrawal, $52,000, November 15th, Michael D. Richardson, authorized user. Withdrawal, $38,000, December 1st, Michael D. Richardson, authorized user. Withdrawal, $51,563, December 10th, Michael D. Richardson, authorized user. $186,000. My entire life savings for my grandchildren's education. Gone. Stolen by my own son who I trusted to help manage my finances as I got older.
Linda looked horrified. Mrs. Richardson, Mr. Michael Richardson was added as an authorized user on this account in September. According to our records, you came in with him and signed all the paperwork yourself. She pulled up more information on her computer. You also signed a document giving him power of attorney for financial decisions regarding this specific account. Power of attorney? The words echoed in my head like a death sentence. I vaguely remembered Michael bringing me some paperwork a few months ago, telling me it was just routine stuff to make sure someone could help me with banking if I ever got sick or confused in my old age. He'd been so caring, so concerned about my well-being. "Mom, I just want to make sure you're protected," he'd said. "This is just so I can help you if you ever need it." I had signed those papers because I loved him, because I trusted him, because he was my son, and I believed he had my best interests at heart. And he had used that trust to steal my entire life's savings, while simultaneously cutting me out of the family because I smelled like medicine. The drive home from the bank was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I kept thinking about all the sacrifices I'd made, all the extra shifts I'd worked, all the times I'd eaten peanut butter sandwiches for dinner so I could put another $50 into that college fund. And now it was gone. All of it. Stolen by my own child to fund his luxury lifestyle, while his children, my grandchildren, would have to take out student loans or miss out on college entirely. When I got home, I called the police immediately. Detective Martinez came to my house within an hour, and I showed him all the bank documents and explained the situation. But honey, what he told me broke my heart even more than the theft itself. "Mrs. Richardson, I'm very sorry this happened to you, but technically, no crime has been committed. Your son was legally authorized to make those withdrawals because you signed the power of attorney documents. Even though you didn't intend for him to take all the money, the bank followed proper procedures. No crime committed. Legal theft." I sat there staring at this police officer, and I could feel something cold and hard settling in my chest where my heart used to be.
My own son had found a way to steal my life savings completely legally, and there was nothing I could do about it. That's when Detective Martinez said something that gave me the first spark of hope I'd felt all day. However, Mrs. Richardson, you do have some options. Since you didn't truly understand what you were signing, and since your son clearly misrepresented the purpose of those documents, you might have grounds for a civil lawsuit. I'd recommend talking to an attorney about elder financial abuse. Elder financial abuse. The phrase made me sick because it meant admitting that I'd been victimized by my own child. But as I sat there in my living room surrounded by the Christmas presents I'd bought with my nurse's salary, while my son was stealing my savings, I realized that's exactly what had happened. I hadn't just been robbed. I'd been abused by someone who was supposed to love and protect me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the lies Michael had told me, all the times he'd asked about my finances while pretending to care about my well-being. I thought about Rebecca's Instagram posts flaunting their wealth while claiming they couldn't afford to contribute to their own children's college funds. I thought about being banned from Christmas because I smelled like medicine, when the real reason was probably because they were afraid I might start asking questions about money. By morning, I had made a decision that would shock everyone who knew me. Sweet, gentle, doormat Dorothy Richardson was about to become someone entirely different. I called attorney Patricia Williams, who specialized in elder law and had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting seniors from financial abuse. When I explained my situation, I could hear the anger in her voice even through the phone. Mrs. Richardson, this is one of the most egregious cases of family financial abuse I've seen in 20 years of practice. Your son deliberately deceived you about the purpose of those legal documents, and then he systematically drained your account while emotionally manipulating you. We're going to make sure he faces consequences for this. But honey, the lawsuit was just the beginning of my revenge, because while Patricia worked on the legal angles, I had some other plans brewing in my mind. Plans that would teach my son and daughter-in-law exactly what happens when you mess with a woman who spent 47 years saving lives and taking no prisoners in an ICU hospital. First, I called Sarah and asked her to come over for coffee. I didn't tell her what I'd discovered. I wanted to see if she knew about Michael's theft or if she was just as much of a victim as I was. When she arrived at my house, she seemed nervous and kept checking her phone like she was expecting bad news. Sarah, honey, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. I poured her coffee in her favorite mug, the one that said "World's Best Daughter" that she'd given me for Mother's Day years ago. Did you know about Michael taking money from my college savings account? The coffee mug slipped right out of her hands and crashed onto my kitchen floor, shattering into a dozen pieces. That told me everything I needed to know before she even opened her mouth. Mom, what are you talking about? But her voice was shaking, and she couldn't look me in the eyes. Sarah Marie, don't you dare lie to me. I used her full name the way I did when she was in trouble as a child. Your brother stole $186,000 from the college fund I set up for your children. Money I saved by working double shifts and eating generic food for 15 years. Did you know about this? The tears started flowing down her face, and honey, I knew I had my answer. Mom, he said you gave him permission. He said he wanted to help him invest the money to make it grow faster for the kids' college funds. I swear I thought it was legitimate. And the Christmas ban, telling me I smell like medicine and can't be around the children, was that part of keeping me away while he finished stealing my money? Sarah's sobbing got louder, and she couldn't even form words anymore. She just nodded her head like a broken doll, confirming that my entire family had conspired to keep me away while my life savings was being stolen. But then Sarah said something that made my blood run cold. Mom, there's more.
Michael, he's been talking about putting you in a nursing home. He says you're getting forgetful and can't take care of yourself anymore. He's already toured 3 facilities and put deposits down at 2 of them. A nursing home? My son was planning to lock me away in some facility so he could steal the rest of my assets without interference. The house Harold and I had paid off over 30 years. My car, my retirement accounts, everything. Y'all, I couldn't stop laughing when I realized what was happening because the irony was delicious. My son thought he was dealing with some confused old lady who would be easy to manipulate and control. He had no idea that 47 years of working in an ICU had made me tougher than a $2 steak and smarter than he gave me credit for.
I spent the next week planning my revenge with the precision of a military operation. First, I called every family member, friend, and neighbor who had ever known Michael growing up. I told them exactly what he had done, how he'd stolen his children's college money while banning their grandmother from Christmas. I made sure everyone in our social circle knew that Michael D. Richardson was a thief who preyed on his own elderly mother. Then I got creative. I called Michael's accounting firm and spoke to his boss, Mr. Henderson, whom I'd met at several family gatherings over the years. Mr. Henderson, this is Dorothy Richardson, Michael's mother. I wanted to bring to your attention some concerning financial irregularities involving my son that might affect his professional reputation. I explained the entire situation, how Michael had used his position of trust to steal from an elderly family member, how he'd misrepresented legal documents, how he'd systematically drained a retirement account meant for his children's education. Mr. Henderson was shocked and promised to look into the matter immediately. But honey, my masterpiece revenge was still coming because I had saved the best for last. I drove to the law office of Margaret Foster, the most expensive and ruthless estate planning attorney in Nashville. I told her I wanted to completely rewrite my will and set up a trust that would make it impossible for my children to access any of my remaining assets. Mrs. Richardson, are you certain about this decision? Margaret asked as she reviewed my new will. This document will disinherit your children entirely and leave your entire estate to various charities. Margaret, I have never been more certain of anything in my life. My voice took on this knowing, satisfied quality that surprised even me. My son stole my grandchildren's college fund to buy luxury cars and investment properties. He planned to put me in a nursing home so he could steal my house, too. And he banned me from Christmas because I smell like medicine after working in a hospital for nearly 50 years. So yes, I'm certain. The new will was a work of art. My house would go to the local women's shelter where I'd volunteered for years. My remaining retirement accounts would be split between the hospital's scholarship fund for nursing students and a charity that helped elderly victims of financial abuse. My car would be donated to a program that provided transportation for seniors who couldn't drive anymore. But the piece de la resistance was a special provision I had Margaret include. Any person who challenged the will in court would automatically forfeit any potential inheritance and would be required to pay all legal costs for defending the will. It was ironclad and specifically designed to prevent Michael and Sarah from fighting the decision. Now came the fun part, letting them know what I'd done. I called Michael on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. Son, I need to tell you something important. I know you stole the college fund. I know you planned to put me in a nursing home. And I know the real reason you banned me from Christmas. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. Finally, Michael's voice came through, tight and defensive. "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. I never stole anything. That money was invested for the kids' benefit." "Oh, honey, I understand perfectly. And here's what's going to happen next. I've rewritten my will. You and Sarah will inherit exactly nothing from me. My house, my savings, my car, everything is going to charities that help people instead of stealing from them. Merry Christmas, Michael." I hung up the phone, and sweetie, I felt lighter than I had in months. The weight of betrayal was still there, but it was balanced now by the satisfaction of justice served ice cold. Christmas morning came, and for the first time in 38 years, I spent it alone. But you know what? It was the most peaceful Christmas I'd had in decades. I made myself a proper breakfast with real eggs and bacon instead of generic cereal. I opened my own present to myself, a beautiful silk scarf I'd been wanting but couldn't afford because I was too busy saving money for ungrateful grandchildren. Around noon, my phone started ringing. Michael, Sarah, Rebecca, even some of the grandchildren who were old enough to have been told what was happening. I let every call go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear their apologies or their attempts to manipulate me back into being their victim. But that evening, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Michael standing on my porch, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen him in his life. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "Mom, please, can we talk? I know I made mistakes, but you're destroying our family." "You destroyed our family the moment you decided to steal from your own children's college fund. You destroyed it when you chose to lie to me about legal documents. You destroyed it when you banned me from Christmas because I supposedly smell like medicine after dedicating my life to saving people's lives." "I can make this right," he said, and those tears were starting to flow. "I can pay the money back. We can work this out as a family." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, sacrificed for, loved unconditionally, and I felt nothing but pity. "Michael, you can't pay back 47 years of trust. You can't undo the fact that you planned to lock me away in a nursing home so you could steal my house. And you certainly can't take back the fact that when I needed my family most, you treated me like garbage. Mom, the kids need their college fund. Emma's only 2 years away from starting university applications." And that's when I delivered my final blow. You should have thought about Emma's college fund before you spent it on Rebecca's BMW and your Florida vacation house. Those children will take out student loans just like millions of other kids do. Maybe they'll appreciate their education more if they have to work for it instead of having it handed to them by a grandmother they were taught to avoid. Michael stood there on my porch for another 10 minutes, alternating between begging and threatening, but I didn't budge. Finally, he walked away, and I knew it was probably the last time I'd see him as anything resembling my son. Over the next few months, the consequences of Michael's actions rippled through our family and community like stones thrown in a pond. His boss at the accounting firm launched an internal investigation that revealed Michael had been using company resources for personal gain. He was fired, and his CPA license was suspended pending a formal review by the state board. Rebecca's fancy lifestyle came to a screeching halt when their credit cards were maxed out and the bank started foreclosure proceedings on both their primary home and their Florida investment property. Turns out, Michael had been using my college fund money to make minimum payments on various debts, and without that stolen income, their house of cards collapsed.
Sarah tried to reach out several times, claiming she was innocent and had been manipulated by Michael just like I was. But honey, I knew better. She might not have stolen the money directly, but she had participated in the conspiracy to keep me away from family gatherings while the theft was happening. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal easily. The grandchildren were the hardest part. Emma, who was 16 and had been planning to attend Vanderbilt University like her grandfather Harold, sent me a letter explaining that she understood why I had done what I did. She said she was ashamed of her father and planned to earn scholarships and work her way through college without any help from family money. That letter made me cry for hours, y'all, because it reminded me that not everyone in my family was lost. There was still hope for the next generation to learn different values than their parents had demonstrated. 6 months after Christmas, I received a call from Patricia Williams, my attorney. "Dorothy, I have some news that might interest you. Michael's criminal attorney contacted me. He wants to discuss a plea agreement." Apparently, the district attorney's office had decided that Michael's actions did constitute elder financial abuse after all, especially given the systematic way he'd manipulated me into signing documents I didn't understand. He was facing potential jail time, heavy fines, and permanent restrictions on his ability to work in finance. "What kind of plea agreement?" I asked, though part of me already knew I didn't care what happened to him anymore. "Full restitution of the stolen funds plus interest, 5 years probation, mandatory counseling for financial crimes against family members, and a public apology published in the Nashville Scene newspaper. In exchange, he'd avoid jail time." I thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. "Patricia, tell his lawyer that I'll consider the plea agreement on one condition. Michael has to volunteer at the women's shelter for 2 years, helping other victims of family financial abuse. He needs to understand what it feels like to be on the other side of this situation." The plea agreement was finalized in August. Michael paid back every penny he stolen, plus interest and penalties that brought the total to over $200,000. The public apology in the newspaper was beautiful, a full-page admission of guilt that detailed exactly what he'd done and how it had affected his family. But the best part was seeing him at the women's shelter, cleaning bathrooms and serving meals to people who'd been victimized by family members, just like he'd victimized me. The other volunteers told me he seemed genuinely remorseful and was working hard to understand the impact of his actions. As for me, I took the restored college fund and set up a new trust that couldn't be touched by anyone in my family. The money would go directly to the grandchildren when they turned 18, but only for education expenses and only if they maintained good grades and stayed out of legal trouble. I also did something for myself that I hadn't done in decades. I took a vacation, a real vacation, not just a weekend trip to visit family who didn't want me around. I went to Ireland, the country my grandparents had left during the potato famine. I walked through the green hills Harold had always dreamed of seeing, and I scattered some of his ashes in the countryside he'd planned to visit before his heart attack. On that trip, sitting in a pub in County Cork, listening to Irish music and drinking the best coffee I'd ever tasted, I realized something important. I had spent so much of my life taking care of other people, patients, family members, grandchildren, that I'd forgotten how to take care of myself. Michael's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been liberating in a way I never expected. When I returned to Nashville, I made some changes. I retired from nursing after 47 years with a retirement party that was attended by hundreds of former patients, colleagues, and friends. I sold my house, the one Harold and I had shared for 30 years, and bought a smaller place in a senior community where I could have independence but also companionship with people my own age. I started dating. Can you believe that? At 75 years old, I joined a seniors group at my church and met Walter, a widowed retired teacher, who made me laugh like I hadn't laughed since Harold died. We take ballroom dancing classes together and play cards every Tuesday night. Most importantly, I learned to set boundaries. When Sarah tried to reconcile by inviting me to her daughter's graduation, I politely declined. "Sarah, honey, I love you and I forgive you, but trust has to be earned back slowly. Maybe next year we can start with coffee and see how it goes." Michael made several attempts to rebuild our relationship, but I kept things cordial and distant. He could prove his sincerity through his actions at the women's shelter and his commitment to therapy, but I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine just because he paid back the money. The grandchildren were different. Emma did earn academic scholarships and is now in her second year at Vanderbilt, studying pre-med, with plans to become a nurse like her grandmother. She visits me once a month, and we talk about everything except her parents. She's learned to see me as Dorothy the person, not just Grandma Dot who exists to give gifts and babysit for free. 2 years after that terrible Christmas, I received a letter that surprised me more than anything else in this whole story. It was from Rebecca, Michael's wife, the woman who had started this whole mess by claiming I smelled like medicine and was dangerous to be around the children. "Dear Mrs. Richardson," the letter began, and honey, I could tell she'd rewritten it multiple times because the handwriting was so careful and deliberate. "I know you have every right to hate me, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I understand now what we did to you was unforgivable. I was materialistic and selfish, and I encouraged Michael to take actions that destroyed our family. I am in therapy now, trying to understand how I became the kind of person who could treat an elderly family member so cruelly. The children ask about you constantly, and I tell them the truth, that Grandma Dot loved them more than anyone, and we were too stupid and greedy to appreciate that love." I read that letter 3 times, and each time I felt a little piece of the ice around my heart start to melt. Not because I was ready to forgive and forget, some wounds cut too deep for that, but because it showed me that people could change if they were willing to face the truth about themselves. But the biggest surprise came 6 months later. I was volunteering at the hospital's scholarship program, helping young nursing students navigate their studies, when one of the administrators asked to speak with me privately. "Mrs. Richardson, we've received an unusual donation request. Someone wants to establish a scholarship in your name, the Dorothy Mae Richardson Memorial Fund for nursing students from low-income families. The initial donation is $250,000. $250,000? That was more than my entire life savings had ever been. Who would donate that kind of money?" I asked, genuinely confused. The donor wants to remain anonymous, but they left a note. The administrator handed me an envelope with my name written in Michael's familiar handwriting.
Inside was a short letter. "Mom, I can never undo what I did to you, but I can try to honor the woman you are and the career you devoted to helping others. This money comes from the sale of our Florida property and Rebecca's jewelry collection. It's not enough to make up for what we stole from you, but maybe it can help other people achieve the dreams of helping others that you showed me were possible. I love you, even though I don't deserve your love in return. Your son, Michael." Y'all, I sat in that administrator's office and cried like a baby. Not because the money fixed everything, it didn't, but because it showed me that maybe, just maybe, my son had learned something from watching his world fall apart. Maybe he'd finally understood that his mother wasn't just some confused old lady to be managed and manipulated, but a woman who had dedicated her life to serving others. I accepted the scholarship fund, but with conditions. Recipients had to write essays about elder care and respect for older adults. They had to volunteer at nursing homes or senior centers as part of their training, and they had to promise to never forget that every elderly person they encountered in their careers was someone's mother, father, grandmother, or grandfather who deserved dignity and respect.
The first scholarship recipient was a young man named David, whose grandmother had raised him after his parents died in a car accident. His essay about watching his grandmother work 3 jobs to put him through high school while battling arthritis and diabetes reminded me so much of my own struggles to provide for my children that I knew Harold would have approved of this use of our money. 3 years after that awful Christmas, I finally felt ready to take a small step toward healing with my family. Emma's college graduation was approaching, and she asked if I would attend. Grandma died. I know things are complicated with Mom and Dad, but this day wouldn't mean anything without you there. You're the one who taught me that helping people was the most important thing you could do with your life. I thought about it for weeks. Part of me was still angry, still hurt, still protective of the boundaries I'd built around my heart. But another part of me, the part that remembered holding Emma as a baby, teaching her to ride her first bicycle, helping her with homework at my kitchen table, that part wanted to celebrate this moment with her. I decided to go, but on my terms. I would attend the graduation ceremony, take Emma out for a celebration dinner, just the 2 of us, and then leave. No family gathering, no pretending everything was fine, no forced reconciliation with people who had hurt me so deeply. The graduation was beautiful. Watching Emma walk across that stage in her cap and gown, knowing she'd earned every bit of that achievement through her own hard work and determination, filled me with a pride that had nothing to do with my complicated relationship with her parents. After the ceremony, as I was walking to my car, Michael approached me. He looked older, more worn down than I remembered, and there was something different in his eyes, a humility that hadn't been there before. "Mom, thank you for coming. It meant everything to Emma, and it means everything to me that you're still part of her life, even though I don't deserve to be part of yours." I stopped walking and looked at my son, really looked at him for the first time in 3 years. "Michael, I'm not ready to have you back in my life the way things used to be. Maybe I never will be. But I'm proud of the work you're doing at the shelter, and I'm proud that you found a way to fund the nursing scholarship without being asked. Mom, I know I can't undo what I did. I know I can't take back the pain I caused you. But I want you to know that losing you was the worst consequence of my actions. Worse than losing my job, worse than losing the house, worse than anything else. I didn't just steal your money. I threw away the love of the most important person in my life." His voice was breaking, and honey, despite everything he'd done to me, he was still my child. The little boy I'd rock to sleep, the teenager I'd stay up worrying about, the young man I've been so proud to see graduate from college. That history just doesn't disappear, even when it's been badly damaged. Michael, if you want any chance of rebuilding a relationship with me, it has to be different. It has to be based on respect, honesty, and the understanding that I'm not just your old mother who can be managed and manipulated. I'm a person with my own thoughts, feelings, and boundaries. I understand, Mom. I'm willing to work for it, however long it takes. That conversation didn't fix everything. Healing from that kind of betrayal takes years, not minutes. But it was a start. A small crack in the wall I'd built around my heart, just big enough to let in a little hope. Today, 5 years after that terrible Christmas, my life looks completely different than I ever imagined it would. I live in my cozy apartment in the senior community, where I have friends who play bridge and go on group trips to places like Branson and Gatlinburg. Walter and I have been companions for 3 years now, and while we'll probably never remarry at our age, we enjoy each other's company and share a love of old movies and good coffee. Emma graduated with honors and is now in medical school working towards her dream of becoming a pediatric nurse. She still visits me regularly, and our relationship is stronger than ever because it's built on mutual respect rather than obligation. She calls me Dorothy now instead of Grandma Dot, and somehow that feels more honest and authentic. Michael and I have coffee once a month at a neutral location, a diner downtown where we can talk without the weight of family history pressing down on us. He's been consistently attending therapy, working at the shelter, and slowly rebuilding his accounting practice with a focus on helping seniors with financial planning. We're not close the way we used to be, and probably never will be, but we're civil and even sometimes friendly. Sarah took longer to acknowledge her role in what happened, but eventually she came to understand that staying silent while I was being manipulated made her complicit in the betrayal. We exchange Christmas cards now, and she occasionally brings her younger children to visit, though always with advance notice and clear boundaries about the visit's length and purpose. The other grandchildren are finding their own ways to navigate the complicated family dynamics. Some have chosen to maintain relationships with me despite their parents' discomfort. Others have decided it's too difficult. I've learned to accept these choices without taking them personally, understanding that children shouldn't be forced to choose sides in adult conflicts. The Dorothy Mae Richardson Memorial Fund for Nursing Students has now provided scholarships to over 40 young people, and I get letters from recipients telling me about their work in hospitals, nursing homes, and community health centers. Each letter reminds me that even the worst experiences can be transformed into something that helps others. But the most important thing I learned from this whole experience is something that took me 75 years to figure out. You teach people how to treat you by what you're willing to accept. For most of my life, I accepted being taken for granted, being treated like a convenient resource rather than a person with her own needs and feelings. I accepted being the family member who always gave and never received, who always accommodated and never complained.
Michael's betrayal was devastating, but it was also a wake-up call. It forced me to stop being a doormat and start being a person who demanded respect. It taught me that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's enabling, and it doesn't help anyone grow or change. Y'all, I want to end this story by saying something directly to anyone listening who might be in a similar situation. If you're an older person dealing with family members who take you for granted, who treat you like you're invisible or inconvenient, who make you feel like a burden, listen to me carefully. You deserve better. You deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of your age. Don't let anyone tell you that you should just be grateful for whatever scraps of attention they're willing to give you. Don't let anyone convince you that you're too old to matter, too old to have boundaries, too old to demand better treatment. Age brings wisdom and perspective that younger people lack, and that wisdom has value. If someone is taking advantage of you financially, speak up. If someone is emotionally manipulating you or making you feel guilty for having needs, get help. There are resources available. Elder abuse hotlines, legal aid societies, counseling services specifically for seniors. You don't have to face these situations alone. And remember this, setting boundaries isn't mean or selfish. It's necessary. It's how you teach people to treat you with respect. Sometimes the people who love you need a wake-up call to understand that their behavior is hurtful. Sometimes they need to face consequences before they'll change. Not everyone will respond to boundaries the way you hope they will. Some people will choose their convenience over your dignity, their comfort over your well-being. When that happens, you have to be prepared to protect yourself, even if it means limiting contact with people you love. But here's what I want you to remember most of all. It's never too late to start standing up for yourself. I was 74 years old when I finally learned to say no and mean it. I was 74 when I learned that I deserved better than being treated like a medicine-smelling inconvenience by my own family. 5 years later, I'm happier and more at peace than I've been in decades. Yes, I lost some relationships, but the ones that survived are stronger and more honest than they ever were before. Yes, I went through pain and betrayal, but I also discovered strengths that I didn't know I had and built a life that truly belongs to me. To the young people listening, treat your elderly family members with respect and dignity. Don't wait until it's too late to appreciate their wisdom, their sacrifices, and their love. Don't assume that because someone is old, they don't have feelings or needs or boundaries that deserve to be honored. And to my fellow seniors, honey, you matter. Your voice matters. Your feelings matter. Your boundaries matter. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise, not even your own children. That terrible Christmas when my son told me I smelled like medicine and couldn't be around my grandchildren was the worst day of my life. But it was also the day I started learning to love and respect myself enough to demand that others do the same. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can become the catalyst for the best changes you ever make. Y'all, thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there who needs to hear that they're worth fighting for, even if the person they have to fight is someone they love. Drop a comment below and let me know what state you're calling home from, and tell me, what's the most important lesson you've learned about family relationships? I read every single comment, and your stories help me remember that none of us are alone in this complicated journey called life. Remember to subscribe and hit that bell if this story touched your heart, because, honey, I've got plenty more where this came from. Until next time, this is Dorothy Richardson reminding you that you're never too old to start standing up for yourself, and you're never too old to deserve better.